Coming to you live here at the Outsiders Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Today, we're going to have a very short show and we're going to have a short conversation about a simple topic. I've been getting a lot of calls this week about is it a good time to sell your house or is it a good time to buy a house? And basically, hold on a second. I'm just going to turn this down. So now I decided just to do a quick live podcast about buying and selling. There's no magical crystal ball that'll say, it's now's the time to buy a house or now's the time to sell your house. But let's talk about buying a house. If you're thinking about buying a house, here's some things. I call it the four-legged stool. So financial stability, having a steady income, and basically having a decent job if you're married or not married, but having something coming in that'll be able to pay that mortgage payment. And with that being said, the second step is calculate your debt to income ratio. So what is a debt to income ratio? It's usually your debt against your income. So that's called the debt to income ratio. And what does that mean? Let's say, for example, you make $1,000 a week. 43% of that, which is $430 against that $1,000 becomes 43% of your debt to income ratio. If you can keep your debt at $430 a month, a week, off of $1,000, you're at 43%. You're buyer ready to buy a house, plus or minus. I'm just throwing general numbers out there, but it's 43% debt to income ratio. You have to have a minimum of a 3.5% down payment. But if you have 20% down, you avoid what's called private mortgage insurance, PMI. But 3.5% down payment is all you need. So for every $100,000 house you're buying, you just need $3,500 down payment. So do the math. 200,000, you need 7,000. Okay, and so on and so forth. So every 100,000, you'll need 3,500 as a down payment off of every $100,000 that you purchase. But if you have 20% down, which is 20,000 off of every 100,000 house that you're purchasing, that's you avoid a lot of costs and you actually save more money putting 20% down. Excuse me. Now, the fourth leg of the stool is your credit score. Now, people say, oh, I have a 700 credit score. I have an 800 credit score. I have a 680 credit score or what have you. The minimum credit score you need to buy a house is 600. Some banks will do at 580 or above. So just think about that. Banks look at your financial stability. And some programs are very aggressive and very liberal as far as lending. So if you don't have that 800 or 700 credit score, you can still buy a house with a lower credit score as long as you have the down payment and other factors involved. So when you're applying for a mortgage, it's a total global profile that they look at. So remember, to be ready to buy a house, you have to have a job, financial stability, your debt to income ratio at 43%, down payment minimum of $3,500, a 3.5% down payment, and a minimum credit score of 600 on average will get you a house. And things to consider when you're buying a house, mortgage rates, home prices, inventory and competition, and cost beyond the price of the house that you're buying, such as taxes, insurance, maintenance, etc. So when you're buying a house, it's not just buying a house, getting into it and living. It's kind of like you're renting, but you're renting towards your equity. So not all the time is a good time to buy. Sometimes it's a good time to rent. It all depends on location that you're at, situation, financial timing, and so on and so forth. Not everyone's equipped to buy a house at every moment in time. So if the financial costs exceed the rental costs, then you better stay renting, of course. But like I said, it all depends on location. Um, Mortgage rates, that that's controlled by the Federal Reserve, and that's controlled by the banks. They set the pricing and so on and so forth. And yeah, home prices in this region in New England is through the roof. So sometimes you know you got to do the math. If the cost of the house or the pay mortgage payments are going to exceed the rents. I know you could buy a multifamily and have the rents offset the mortgage payments, subsidize the mortgage payments, but nowadays the price is so high. Not all the time when you buy a multifamily that the rents will cover the mortgage payments, especially if you're living in one unit. Sometimes you're lucky if you even breaking even. So you have to ask yourself the question: do I remain renting, or do I look to buy a house? So like I said, there's no magical potion here. It's basically fall under those criterias: your financial stability, your debt to income ratio, your down payment, and your credit score. And you calculate the math with the mortgage rates, the home prices, and look at the inventory. Inventory is low out there. I'm not discouraging anyone not to buy a house. This is not what this is all about. But we have to consider all factors because you don't want to set yourself up for failure. And I see a lot of families living together. Uh, Two families in one apartment, sharing an apartment. My advice to that is, if you're able to do that, why not buy a multifamily house and everyone stays on each unit and split that rent up instead of paying $3,500 a month for a three-bedroom apartment that everyone's cramped up in. Get a big house, okay? And even if the mortgage is $6,000 a month, you have three families living in three family house where each person lives in one of three units. Um, and you take that 6,000, you divide it. It's cheaper than actually paying rent. So that's another strategy to buy a house that you cannot afford. And sometimes nowadays in life, we have to kind of like uh, think creatively and so on and so forth. Like if you have grown children that work and have a job, have a profession, that are still living at home, and you're renting, get the kids involved. Get the kids on the loan, uh, get them on the down payment situation, the income situation, and you'll qualify for a home. Um, but honestly, if the rent growth is high and growing at a faster rate than a mortgage payment, then buying makes sense. But if it's the other way around, renting makes sense. So it's kind of like picking your poison. So also, um, if you're looking to buy a house, I suggest you get a realtor and a good mortgage officer. And don't just work with like 5, 10 realtors at the same time. When you get a realtor, stick with that one realtor, because what happens is each realtor works in a small network of this industry. We all know each other, well, for the most part. And when you have a realtor, stick with them unless they're not doing their job properly and you change them for another realtor. Uh, and basically, in this industry, um, when you're working with multiple real estate agents at the same time, you're gonna get a house really slow, because then the realtor loses trust in you, you lose trust in them. Then there's no synergy, there's no activity going on, and that realtor's not going to go to bat for you, knowing that by at any moment you're going to bail on them. So it creates security for both sides. It creates security for the realtor. It creates security for the buyer. And once you guys build trust within each other, finding that house will be something easier to do and quick. So uh, another thing, um, we want to talk about if this is a time to sell. Uh, I don't have that crystal ball. I see a lot of houses being sold. But when someone asks me, is this the right time to sell? I ask them the question, what's your motivation to sell? Are you just selling for the sake of selling because the market's high? Or are you selling because you have a goal to meet, a timeline, and so on and so forth? So if I person was going to sell a house, there has to be a motivation. So the question to the seller would be, what's your motivation? Are you trying to move out of town? Are your kids graduating from college and you got to get a smaller house because they're moving out? Or are you getting married? So you got to upsize. Are you having children? So you got to upsize. There's different reasons why people want to sell their homes. So it's the motivation. So, but then if your motivation is to sell, based off of whatever motivation you have, situation you have to look at your goals and your costs. Okay, uh, how much are you trying to make out of this house, and how much will it cost for you to sell? You got brokers fees, you got taxes to pay, you got mortgage to pay off. So basically, when you're paying off when you're selling a house, let's say you sell it for 100,000, you're not walking away with 100,000. That 100,000 you might owe 50,000 on the mortgage, another 10 on broker's fees. So you're at 60. So now you're left with 40, but then you have all these other miscellaneous closing costs. So you have to do the math to see if it's worth you selling your house. And if you do, the proceeds that you're getting, if it's going to be worth you achieving this goal and this motivation that you have. So you have to do a little bit of math here. Um, now that you have decided to sell your house, you have to look at the property readiness, the condition and value of the property, the market exposure, and so on and so forth. You have to price the property right based off the condition of the property. If you haven't touched the property in over 20 years, the property that you lived in, it's probably going to need some updating. You probably have old countertops, old cabinets, uh, old bathroom design, and so on and so forth, old tiles. So you can't demand a substantial amount of price because your neighbor sold his for $1 million. So therefore, yours is going to be worth 2 million because your house is bigger. But there's different factors that goes into that. You know, have you been upkeeping the property for the past 20 years prior to selling? And your neighbor's house that sold for 1 million, let's go look at that house and see why it sold for 1 million. And maybe there was more demand for that house and not for yours. So we have to take all this into consideration. Um, you know, um, before you sell a house, you have to figure out, is there a buyer demand for it in your location? And location. Being close to a train station in a city is key. Being close to a highway is key for commuters, people that commute back and forth for work, and being close to a highway. Sizes of the bedrooms, uh, you know, modern bathrooms. People love their kitchens and baths, and the modern homeowner spends 90% of their time in their home in the kitchen and bath. Believe me when I tell you this. So more than any other room in the house. So that has to pop when you sell it. That has to be the main selling point, the kitchen and bath. And nowadays people want their man cave, so now they want finished basements, and so on and so forth. But um, then also people ask me a lot about what season is right to sell. Um, you can sell your house any season of the year, But my recommendation is right when spring market opens up or right when summer starts. Um, the grass is green, the lawn's mowed, smell of fresh air, and it's the best time when the sun's out. People want to go out and sell. Winter, your house will sell as well in the winter, but it's just when you have snow on the ground, the lawn's not showing, the flowers are not there, so the curb appeal is not going to be there as much as if you were to sell it in the spring or or summer. So, with that being said, we talk about selling your house. When you have this goal, you have to estimate your proceeds. You have to estimate the proceeds because sometimes when you sell a house, you walk away with nothing if you don't do the math right. And then if you've done the math before you put it on the market, you'll see how much you're making. Plus or minus. So basically, calculate your selling price minus your closing costs. Like I said, you're selling a house for 100,000. Make sure you check how much your payoff for your mortgages. Check the payoff. Check how much of the stamp tax. Check how much of the excess water that you owe. Any other fees, brokers' fees, and so on and so forth. Subtract that from the selling price, and that's how much you're going to get walking away from it. And I've seen situations where the seller sells a house and walks away with nothing. And I've seen situations where the seller sells the house and has to bring money to the table to sell their house. I've been in plenty of those situations. And believe me, it's not a comfortable sight to see a seller sell their house where they have to bring money to closing to pay to sell their house. But, everyone has their circumstances, situational circumstances. And basically, that's that. And like I said, there's no crystal ball timing uh, about selling or buying. It's just everything's circumstantial. Uh, and I believe everyone has an ability to buy a house. And as long as they go step by step and they could be homeowners. And I believe people that own their houses, it's a good way to leverage into bigger and better things. So I got Dulcie, Angels by Dulcie. How you doing? um, so to wrap this up, we talked about personal readiness for home buyers. Okay, we talked about financial stability, steady income. We talked about debt to income ratio, 43% of your income should go towards your debt. Down payment, minimum of 3.5% down. Your credit score, you could buy a house with minimum 600 credit score. Things to consider when buying: mortgage rates, home prices, inventory, and competition, and calculating your costs beyond the purchase price, such as taxes, insurance, maintenance, etc., PMI, so on and so forth. If you're renting, um, do your calculations. Do a rent versus buy calculation. Okay, calculate your rent and calculate a mortgage payment and see which one's cheaper. But at the same time, do a 5-year projection to see if, in fact, owning a house would be cheaper than renting in the long run. And I also talked about households that have multiple families living in the household. It's a good idea for you guys to get together and buy a multi-unit building and divide the mortgage out that way. It's cheaper than the renting in that aspect, because then your cost of living will go down when you do this. So getting big families and buying a multi-unit dwelling and split the cost. And also, we talked about is it the good time to sell? Motivation and timeline. We talked about goals and costs, property readiness, market exposures, and risk tolerance. We talked about that. Is there buyer demand? We talked about that. And what season is right to sell. We talked about that. And finally, we also discussed estimating your net proceeds, and be careful when you're selling your house to make this calculation so that you don't show up to closing having to bring money out of your pocket to sell your house. It happens. But if you guys need more information, you guys can reach me on my cell phone. I'll give you guys my cell phone number. I always answer my phone. 857-205-5812. That's 857-205-5812. Thank you. And you're tuned in to The Outsiders. This is Hamilton Rodrigues. And every Sunday we have a podcast, but today we had to cancel the earlier podcast. So I'm here, decided to talk about this wonderful topic about is it worth buying or selling? So here it is. My cell phone number, once again, is 857-205-5812. If you need to reach me, text me any time of the day. I always respond within 24 hours. Thank you, and I appreciate your time. And tune in to the next episode. This is Hamilton Rodrigues. You're tuned into The Outsiders.